I hope you can hear me. I can currently not see you. Yeah, you see here this link. Actually, this link will come later again. From there, you can also get then the slides, more resources, videos I reference in my presentation, or actually give feedback. So yeah, so we're talking today about design thinking, especially how to drive innovation by user needs and not feasibility, technical feasibility. And I think that fit.
Share screen.
Okay, sorry for that. Okay, now everything is nice and good. You will see that link later again. So, and I think we will send you the slides as well. So that's me. My mission is to help people to work together in the most beautiful way. I have a technical background, was CTO of a successful startup. And yeah, when I was making the slides here, I applied the design principle, which is actually more is more. So we will have a lot of slides. We will have time for a short discussion afterward, but I thought I'll provide you content. So let's see how that works out. I will talk about why actually you should care about design thinking. Why is it important? What is it? And then how to do it. So yeah, let's start at the beginning. Actually, why should you care? Well, there are actually financial benefits of being design-oriented. You see that companies like Apple, Nike, Coca-Cola, Walt Disney, and the other design-oriented company outperformed the Standard & Poor's index quite significantly. So there is actually also a business driver behind all this. But now let's move more to the user side. I also coach startups, and it's really sad. So these are two statistics showing the very same thing, which actually says 40% of the startups fail because they produce something nobody wants. So you see all these investments and all the time goes into something which fails at the end of the market. You cannot always 100% know, but you could know better. And I think the same thing goes with a lot of other innovation. And design thinking is an approach to address exactly that issue. Okay, a lot of words on this slide. Kunefin is a framework about a decision, like in which field or space you should use what kind of decision process. And often we are on the right-hand side, so we think we are actually in an obvious space where cause and effect is really close and correlated. Often we are in complicated fields where actually an expert can know, or after some analysis, you can know how cause and effect match together. There is actually the upper left part, which is the complex space, and in there you have a correlation between cause and effect, but you only see it once backward. So, and in this space, you have emerging practices you need to probe, and only then you can see what is happening. Good examples are now the pandemic, financial crisis, change processes in companies, and also building a new product. And design thinking is actually a very good tool to work in this domain. So now we go into this complex domain. So we need to give up fixed goals, because in a complex domain, it's hard to reach a fixed goal because there are too many parameters you cannot control. So we need to do something more like that and adapt, have emerging strategies. In the end, we will reach the goal. We just didn't know what is the goal at the beginning. That's maybe a bit strange because we grew up differently, but that's how life works often. So what is true innovation? True innovation is combination of feasibility, viability, and desirability. Design thinking here is mostly addressing desirability, also in later stages the feasibility. And I think it's good to approach innovation projects, especially technical projects, from the desirability, because often they are driven by feasibility and lack on the desirability in the end. Okay, so now I hopefully got you there, so you know now why design thinking matters for you. Now let's see, what is design thinking? Design thinking is a process, not a process. That's often when we present design thinking, we show it as a process, 5 steps, 6 steps, depending on the model. While it is obviously a process at its core, it's much more. And I'm now showing you these 6 ingredients, I call them. And today we will go through these ingredients one by one. And we start at the center, the mindset. So what is design thinking or creative thinking? It's actually a thinking or a worldview which puts the question in the center. You want to explore, you empathize with people, you wonder why something is happening or how it could be solved differently, and you start to have ideas and so on. On the other hand, logical thinking, that's actually what we use a lot in business, is very answer-focused, fact-focused. We use that a lot in school to write a test, to get a promotion, to argue about the report, and so on. Both are equally valid, and in a design thinking process, you use both ways of thinking. But today we focus on creative thinking because that's what we use less, so that's what I want to emphasize. Yeah, you should be driven by curiosity, accept complexity, because we are in a complex domain. And we also focus here more on people. So we put people first. And in Zen, we have the term of the beginner's mind. So it's actually, the thing is, when you start to meditate, you have this beginner's mind, you are curious, you're open, and then the next years you practice to just go back to this state. And with design and design thinking, it can be very similar, like how can I move to a mindset where I see things fresh, even with all my knowledge, my education. The next thing is the environment. Here we could talk longish about company culture, what kind of culture you need. It's just important to understand this here was a research on why innovation fails in companies, and it's not that they are not technically fit, they do not have enough ideas or whatever. That's actually less the issue, but really politics, cultural issues, lack of strategy or vision in that direction. This is what is hindering this kind of projects. Just short, what is culture for me? There are billions of definitions. For me, it's if the strategy is the arrow and your bow is your tooling, your team, the people, all the quality, the things you have, then culture is really what pulls the bow, and only that makes it work. So if you have politics and the problems there, you will not have the power to really pull enough, and it just doesn't work. Next thing is time, and I think that's probably one of the most important one here. We are trained to work efficiently, and that's nice and good. And we often think that the direct part is the most efficient one because it's the fastest, it uses the least amount of resources. in innovation and in a design thinking process, yes, that's shorter. It uses less resources, but you see, you miss the magic point. You don't get to this solution, which just needs more time, and you need to go down, you need a reflection phase, and then you have this, there's a typical under the shower moment where you have aha, or your team has an aha moment, and you go up again. So, and this, in this complex space, this is the efficient way to do things. So here an example, this summer, that's on the Männlichen, it's quite high top. You would see Jungfrau Joch and Eigen Mönch, and anything. But you see, you just know it's there. But yeah, you only have this picture inside, and you just need to believe that it would be there. And you see, on the second day, like, you start to see and understand, and things are nice. So always make sure that you have these two phases so that the fog can go away. You will always have foggy times, foggy days in a design thinking process, but just keep walking. The team. You want to have an interdisciplinary team. First, you want to have a team, except for you can also apply it to smaller projects where you are alone. You can use the process as well, no problem there. But you want to have different opinions. So you want to have people with the so-called T-shaped profiles. So actually, they have their expertise. They go deep in some region, but they also have a broader understanding of other topics and are quite interested in other things. What you don't want is too much of a hierarchy in there. Well, you can mix people, that's good, but make sure that hierarchy doesn't apply in the team. You also don't want the customers in these teams because they would drive the team too much. We want to observe the customer. We don't want the customer or just one particular exponent of the customers telling us what to do. Yeah, so about 5-6 people is ideal. And once you have the team, Google has done a lot of research, spent millions to find out what makes teams great. When do they work well? And psychological safety is one of the key components. That means in a team, am I able to say what I think? Can I be courageous? Can I make a bold idea and or have stupid ideas? Can I say, can I ask for help? Can I say, I don't know? And whatever you can do to provide this in a team, do it. And one simple way is actually in this research, one of the parameters which were clearly showing if a team will perform good was how equally the speaking time was distributed between the members. So look in your team, make sure speaking time is distributed, maybe discuss in rounds, make a check-in round, make a check-out round, make sure that you ask some of the quieted people to speak up. That is actually really important and a success factor. So now I quickly check time and we are all good. I told you I have a lot of slides, but in the end, at the core of design thinking, or at least what we call design thinking in education, at the core, there is this process. And I already said we should not limit it to the process, but the process is important. So maybe that might surprise you. In my opinion, this here is one of the most important slides in this deck, because that's actually what you're going to do all the time. So you will navigate or manage the design space. So you will try to open up with some tools or with questions, and then at a certain point where you feel it's right or you think you had a magic moment, or you know it, or then you go and close it down. So first you open it with more why-related questions, question focus, and then you go and ask, actually, how can that be prototyped? How can we test it? So in the end, all this process and tooling is about opening and closing the design space in a way that hopefully at the end you will have a great result. We do that twice. First, we navigate the problem space and then the solution space. And if you remember the graphic with the U going down to the magic moment, but a lot of teams or what they neglect is actually the problem space. Using enough time for the problem space to understand user and so on. We will see that later. And finally here, that's the process. There are different kind of, some use 5-step, some use empathy as the first step in front. You understand the problem based on the information you have. You go observe, find your point of view, then ideate, prototype, and test. We will go to each step and then quickly see what is actually happening there. And that's what we are doing now, actually, how to do design thinking, how to practically apply what we have heard now. So, first, we want to understand the problem. We need a good starting point. That's not yet doing a lot of research, but we need some clarity on what are we going to solve, because otherwise we do not know who to interview and where to go to. So why does this problem exist? How is it solved today? Who has this problem? Maybe you also define some design principles. You just make the grid to work in. On the next space, now it starts to be interesting. You go and observe. One tool I like to use is a so-called empathy map. That's you see here. You go and make interviews, you collect data, and you then analyze what do they think, feel, what do they actually say, what are their pains, what are their gains. Here, following with an example, like a typical case. So we were asked to help on a app for the hospital, and it was everything signed to implement it. And then we asked the question, like, did you ever talk to nurses, doctors, or patients? And actually, they didn't. So, it was just like 1 hour, or I think it was a 2-hour workshop, working with different stakeholders there. And we found out that they have complete different problems. For instance, it's difficult if people don't know why they are taking the medication. Often after the hospital, they fail to take them, which is a big burden. They come unwell prepared in the hospital, so they shouldn't eat, but they have eaten. And then you need to actually cancel the operation. And so these were completely different use cases in the end than anticipated. You can make a customer journey map. I will not explain these tools in details. If you have the slides, you can look them up. There are a good description how it can work, and I also have a book recommendation in the resources. Then, so yeah, it's just about understanding what is happening. Do interviews. If you don't have the opportunity to do interviews, make yourself role plays. Be a patient, do something like that. As soon you're playing a role, you start to behave a bit like this person, and you can already learn how that will feel. Will you use it? Is it really what concerns you now? Now we need to close. We opened, now we need to close the problem space, and we want to define a point of view. So that's to get the right answer, find the right question first. So we started with the problem statement, but that was just the start. We know now much more, and now we really have to say, what is the question we are going to answer or find solutions for in our design process? So there are different ingredients, but the main currency in design thing is actually working with insights. Hopefully, not hopefully, you will always, if you go through the observation, you will produce insight. And like I explained now about taking the medications, and then you start to use these ingredients to formulate your point of view. That's one of the most basic templates. A user needs what to do what because of some surprising insight. And as this point of view, it's not easy to formulate. It sounds like super easy. It takes also some time. It should provide focus. It should inspire. Should drive decisions, because afterward you will produce 100, maybe 100 ideas, and then you need to say which ones are good. You can only say that if you have a very good point of view, because otherwise you are building something which is everything to everybody, which is nothing to nobody. And this allows you then, if you have the point of view, to make so-called how might we question, to build the follow-up questions, which you then use in the design process. Now comes the fun part, ideation. It's about actually about making this creative leap, to make this jump. In retrospective, it looks very difficult to end there, but actually, if you're at the beginning of this road, you just want to go straight. There are tools which help us to make this jump, if you want, and we need them because you see in kindergarten. So the experiment here is to how can you use paper clips in different applications, and kindergarten children, they perform on a genius level. I don't know what is really the number of variations you need, but you know, 98% are on a genius level. When they are 15, only 10% are still on that genius level. So open-minded and so courageous to just put ideas. And if you do the same experiment with adults, only 2% perform at the genius level. So we need some help to go back to this beginner's mind, to the kindergarten children's mind state. For that, we use mental provocations. So for instance, you can so-called steal a category, think about how would they do it, solve it in Hollywood. I often use companies, like if we were bought by Amazon, how would they solve it? If we were bought by Marvel, how would they solve it? So you can just use these provocations. Also, constraints are useful. What if we had no money? What if we could only serve 10 users? And here on the right-hand side, you see a mood board. So working with pictures about which might inspire you. And that's actually the mood board of Huawei, so the company I'm running. Move. And I check time. Don't, well, sometimes sit around the table and do brainstorming, but we start to think differently, more openly if we walk. You know, if you have a difficult conversation, we also tend to walk. If we actually make phone calls, some people tend to walk. But in meetings, we sit. And there are different techniques. Maybe you just interrupt the session by walking, or you walk in a circle and throw in ideas. So the post-it, you throw them into the center. You just try to get something moving, or you play some situations so that you get into this mode. Once you have ideas, you want to also improve them or look at them. And Walt Disney used this method, like he was using the dreamer role, then he moved to the realist mode, to the critical mode, and so on. In the end of his life, he really went so far to have different rooms. So when he had an idea, he was then going to the dreamer room, to the realist room, and it's really also helps in with teams, because often you have critical people, you have dreamers, and now they will just discuss because they see it from this side and the other sees it from the more sunnier side, and you can discuss endlessly. But if you move as a team, like from the dreamer mode all together to the realist mode, to the critic mode, that helps a lot to really drive the idea. That's a rescue tool. If nothing works, you can use negative brainstorming, like how bad can you make it? That inspires, that removes the barriers. And obviously, at some point when you know what is the worst solution, that's normally a hint to a good solution. So you can also do, sometimes I do that also with teams. If there are problems, we think about how could we make it worse. And then we can see how much of these things we are actually doing and see what we want to do with this. At some point, we need then to select ideas. One tool is to not only select ideas based on very rational criteria, but have different categories where we allow us to take some ideas with us. So a rational choice, a long shot, which is really something we think, yeah, that could really work in long term. It will not work in a half a year or a year. The darling of the team. So maybe something happened and this is just our darling and we want to keep it, or a solution where we think, okay, that will make users especially happy, but maybe it's not a rational choice. So have a diverse set of ideas you take with you into the next phase, which is now actually about prototyping. And often if you have talks about design thinking, that's what you see, or you see these workshops, that's where people use Lego and other things to build up their prototypes. And it's again like moving with thinking with the body, thinking with the hands, doing something. It helps, well, first to visualize ideas. And not everybody from us can sketch well. So that was from a workshop where they built a model. The challenge was how to learn a language, and they were putting together, like here in Basel, we can use the French and the German people, and actually working people who help each other to learn languages. By doing this, you also you see where are disagreements. You can start a conversation, and you can fail quickly and cheaply. So in this mode, it's really not about being right. Anyway, that's also what I say often to startups. It doesn't matter whether you were right at the beginning. I mean, it's important to be right at the end. So you can work here on a very conceptual level. So you see, well, you need to say what it is, but once you say it, yeah, that's wasabi and the tuna sushi, and now I want to eat sushi this evening. So personally, I love storyboards, splitting paper in 8 panels and start at the end. That's normally easier, where you want to end, maybe the beginning, and then work backward. If you are not someone who likes to draw, you can also just write in there or just give titles to what is happening. That's a good way then also afterward to explain ideas to people, because stories are powerful. Later in the prototyping, it gets more serious. So where we do sort of functional prototype, or we test some critical technical functions. The dark horse is the term is used because in races, a dark horse is really a horse nobody thought it will win. So don't do a lot of those, but sometimes do also risky tests, risky prototypes, and it actually might be the right solution. Then test, and you see actually here there are these drawing lines. So from each state you can move back. So it's not as linear as it is shown here. That's mostly to explain. You will circle a lot between prototype, test, and then again ideate, or you find in test few things, and you even need to go back to the understanding, because you know you were solving a problem which is not a problem, but something else it actually is. So here in the testing, Edward de Bono is one of the, I would say, he learned me to think. So he has written a lot of books about thinking. And yeah, so don't be stubborn, change your mind. And one of the easiest way to collect feedback is the so-called feedback grid, where you collect what was liked, what people were wishing for, that is different questions, and also other ideas. That also works in team meetings, or if someone presents an idea, you put this feedback grid there, and you slowly move from positive, negative, also maybe move field by field. So we are not talking positive and negatives at the same time, and we easily can get feedback in a structured way. So what should you test? Some of your hypotheses, you actually know if they are wrong, the whole thing falls apart. Somehow, well, it's natural, but we have the tendency to actually not test these really deadly assumptions. We often go and test things which are not so deadly, just because we believe we will be confirmed. So manage your hypotheses, make a list of hypotheses, cluster them here, and really see what are the things you want to test. Also then build the prototypes. And sometimes a test is as easy as quickly to Google or calling someone. Johnny Ive, chief designer at Apple, not anymore, but for a long time. So 99% of their time is really spent on failing. Trying something, failing, trying something, failing, worrying, is it working? And that's what leads to these outstanding results. So I want to wrap up. We need the right mindset, the beginner's mind, being curious, allowing us to accept complexity. We need the environment. We need to put aside politics. We must be conscious about time. So working in these two phases, allowing us to get to this magic point, sleeping over, and then obviously we need the team, an interdisciplinary team, a team which can work safely and which has internally psychology safety really established. Then follow the process. There is a process, and it's good to go step by step, at least in the beginning, to make sure you are not rushing into ideation and conclusions. And then start to build up your toolbox. I have presented some here, and there are many, many more. So yeah, it's this question about the opposite of play is not work. The opposite of play is depression. Be a bit more playful at work. It's good for the results, especially also in a complex world, and we live in a complex world. So that's what I wish for everybody. Now, yeah, thank you listening. Thank you also the Impact Hub for having me here. And as I was saying, here are now the links to slides, board. Don't hesitate to write me an email if you have questions tomorrow, or if you really start such a process and you need some idea or a tool, write me an email. Now, I'm not sure if this is working. I quickly show you the board. Just if you go there. Well, here are the resources, 2 good books I could recommend, the slide deck you can download, this from the Stanford University, who initiated the design thinking to some degree. There is a bootleg with some ideas which explains it. Kunafen, a video you can watch, and also explaining this paperclip experiment. Give me feedback here. That would be nice. Then I can learn and do it better next time. And here you can put questions. Actually, I think questions today are now easier if you put them in this in the tool, in the webinar tool we are using. Or I think we can also, otherwise you can also just open up the microphone and make a question, or maybe also some observation, or maybe you have another idea, or you want to correct something because you think it's different. Feel free to go into this discussion. We have 7 minutes for this. And just here to wrap up, I also can now, how can I unhide this? No. I'm sorry, I have hidden this frame, and now. So here you see all the, the slides you have seen. So maybe this also inspires you for some questions or comments. I'm here for you. Yeah, I will now put, actually, that was in the room chat. I can put the link again. Let's put it like that.
Eine Frage war noch, how long can a design thinking process last?
How long? So there is the question: how long a design thinking process can last? I would say forever. But it's important. You always need to say when is one step finished or one phase finished. But obviously, if you especially if you work on a product, if you're a startup and you work on a product, this design thinking process, it will similar to agile methods or lean startup method, it will ongo. Obviously, you will. It's good afterward to move then more in the direction of processes like lean startup or agile implementations once you're really building it. But there will always be moments when you come back with learnings where you see we hit the wall, we need to reinitiate this design thinking process. So in theory, they can go forever, or if you use them for cultural change in a company, then it's never done. But make sure you make goals, reach them, and then proceed. So I hope that was answered. Then, yeah, please, more questions, statements. I think you can just unmute yourself and talk.
You mentioned the feedback group. How does the what if box would work in the discussion? This is something question.
It's mostly if you work with the feedback grid, so the what if, it's mostly about questions. You collect questions. So maybe you show something, or you have a presentation, and you collect questions. And often when people talk about positive or negative things, this will immediately already raise questions. And so because you already have this space, you can put these questions there, so you can later look at them. So it's mostly a field where it's a question, or where you think, what if it instead of doing it online, we would have invited 10 people here into this room. So these kind of questions. It's not only about what if questions, actually. Maybe I should remove this text there. Might be misleading. Mm-hmm.
Does it work to change the culture?
How, or does it?
Does it work to change the culture?
It's not the tool to change a culture, but it can help to first understand the culture and see what actually the people in the company need, and actually what would the customer need, and also the investor need. So going through these phases, especially observation phase, and define a point of view. Well, what are we doing, and why is it worth to change the culture, and then going into some ideas. I think what definitely works in the way how it works to help the culture is then working with experiments. Getting this insight, define what you want to try, make an experiment, and come back in a cycle, and see, does it work, or do we need to change? I personally like that because it helps to accept change, because we are doing experiments. We do our best to analyze and understand the needs. Some experiments will fail and some will work. And in that sense, I think the mindset of design thinking and the tool set of design thinking can be very supportive in this process. Mm-hmm. Then I just try to look nice and say, thank you very much. There is, can this process be done without? Can this process be done without experienced moderator? Sure, it can. It depends on what level you want to do it. So if it is, there is, I recommended, I think, yeah, in the resources, I recommended 2 good books. So most of the tools, they are not rocket science. It's more about doing it. A moderator helps to understand the process, the phases, also if there are conflicts, or maybe it starts to be challenging because some ideas challenge the business model, existing business model, and so on. And then I think it's easier to have a moderator. Let's put it like that. Someone needs to be the moderator of the process. But you can use this also to, let's say, you plan your next holidays in summer with your family, and you just, in the back of your head, you use some of these tools, or you say, okay, let's make some observation, collect some needs, and then we go and do some ideas. And you can do this all by your own. It's like playing. It's like going back to the beginner's mind. Children, they naturally do it. So it can help, but I would hope you better try it and go from work to play, and then write me some emails, and I will give you some tips. So give it a try. Okay, then now you earned your meal. Me too. Enjoy your evening. Bye-bye.